3, 2, 1. Mr. Speaker, ladies and gentlemen, you know what happened when those two F-16 pilots refused to shoot down the United Air commercial aircraft that got hijacked? They went back to base, tried to argue their case, and the politicians and generals who told them the order told them they were insubordinate, called them bad company, and labeled them as rogue. What we get on side opposition, at best, is blind servitude with the guise of trying to humanize war. That is exactly the rhetoric that police use to justify things like police brutality, and even what George Bush did to justify the decades war in Iraq and Afghanistan, when the young men meant to fight these particular wars had their consciences silenced because they were gaslit in believing that they were agents of the state and that these things were absolute. A couple of reasons why side opposition cannot take this debate. Number one, the tension in their case weakens their principled justification and strengthens our side. Yes, we understand that there are laws of international conflict and Geneva Conventions. The harm of not exercising conscience as a metric is exactly wherein you get more of these uncertainties and gray areas, and absent the ability of people to make case-to-case decisions, these conflicts carry out farther. We told you three things. A, at best, you're able to humanize war and reduce civilian casualty. B, in the moderate case, you're able to reduce resources spent and people dying, those people who Jaron told you are proximate to that interest, of which there was no response to at the extension. And thirdly, or C, at the worst case, we can put the gun in the hand of someone who has the emotional capacity and sensitivity to make that hard decision. That was something bold we told you coming from our side. The second thing is that their case doesn't fully evolve to the realities of what we told you in the top of our speech. A, the reason why they're battle-hardened and conditioned to follow orders in and of itself gives them blinders to do things willy-nilly and not take true accountability when their conscience at that point told them no. B, it's more proximate to a diverse reality of changing situations on the ground, which we told you they are more proximate to as opposed to the ones in the White House to call the shots. C, we actually tell you nuanced subjectivity, and they kind of misrep us in terms of saying, Joseph, they're gonna spam everything and say no. But check your flow. We told you that in instances where they say no and spam that reason, we can still have a process to hold them accountable. But in instances that they did concede to, wherein there are gray areas and they have to cry Geneva Conventions or cry to their superior, our case is an extension of that and tells you subjectivity of what has to happen. They try and make this debate about ethics versus functionality, but we actually win both. We tell you that ethics has to evolve to be able to make wars more just and humanize them. And Jaron's extension, which they didn't respond to, talks about how functionality can save us lives and resources of people trying to save themselves and their platoon when they don't just go into things willy-nilly because that what was planned was expected from them. What you plan is different from the outcome because everything that happens in between is what you see in your own crosshairs when you have to make those proximate decisions. Ultimately, we think that they gave us this idea about, they won't follow, etc. But it's ultimately not that simple. Ladies and gentlemen, on their side, they put guns in the hands of young men who they expect to follow orders. What this does is that it makes them poor, desperate, and vulnerable to continue fighting these wars for bloodier, for longer, and ultimately for no valid reason than that what was given. We are very proud to stand on side proposition.